You feel a slight buzz, so you reach into your pocket and pull out an iPhone, the device that reshaped life in the 21st century. We take it for granted, but just a decade ago, this was impossible. In fact, as Steve Jobs went up on stage in 2007 and said the words, an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. As he repeated these three words, he unveiled not three devices, but just one. This transformed the phone industry, just like the words insanely great had changed computing just 2 decades ago. The devices we use on an everyday basis share a likeness to the iPhone that was unveiled on that fateful day. Steve Jobs was a visionary that changed the face of computing. He made technology accessible, he brought back a company from the brink of failure, and had a reality distortion field about him that made the impossible a reality. He was a Henry Ford of computing. He made technology accessible to everyone, not just the tech savvy. He was not a corporate businessman, nor was he an engineer, but he approached technology with design and a human ethos. Jobs and Apple pioneered design paradigms such as the desktop, where applications were placed on top of each other, just like paper on a desk, and the mouse, which allowed the user to click and point at items in an age where terminal commands were common. Or even multi-touch, which let users swipe, drag, and touch the items that they were interacting with on a screen. This was unprecedented. Rarely would Apple be the first to introduce new technology, but they would be the first to make it right. The products just worked. In fact, according to Apple philosophy, technology is best when it just fades away and lets the user focus on the tasks at hand. And Steve was a proponent of that. The iPhone was never the first internet communicator, nor was the iPod the first MP3 player, nor was the Macintosh the first personal computer, but they were the first devices to make the new technology go mainstream into everybody's lives. Jobs was a perfectionist. He would obsess over minute details, like the shade of the color, or the curvature of an icon, or even the smooth feeling of glass on a hand. This level of attention to detail made people fall in love with the products that Steve and the team were creating. This approach to technology saved Apple from failure. In fact, after he was kicked out of his own company from the very man he admired so much, Apple suffered a decade-long drought with mediocre product launch after mediocre product launch, and the company was hemorrhaging money. So, Jobs and his newfound startup, Next Computers, was brought back to the company. Jobs was not afraid to seek help when he needed it. So, the first thing he did when he got back was he partnered with Microsoft. This increased immediate cash flow, and Office introduced businesses to the Mac for the first time. Jobs also skimmed the fat completely. Competing products that would cannibalize the sales of each other were cut immediately, and the product line was streamlined. In the first year of his return, Apple was just 90 days from insolvency. The very next year, however, the company turned a $300 million profit in just 1 year. How was this level of success and turnaround even possible? How is this real? Well, it tends to be real when Jobs bended it himself. Jobs could get the impossible done. One afternoon, after Jobs was fired from Apple, he went on a walk back to campus just to see what the company was up to while he was gone. he met this young, weary designer that was ready to quit just after a year at the job. Steve asked to see the prototypes that were lying on the designer's desk, and he saw the sweeping curve on a monitor that had never been seen before. Just 1 year later, the duo, Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, would unveil the iMac. This catapulted Apple back into the public eye because it showed that Steve would be great at looking at the future. He would be great at looking at what the public wanted. Steve, however, had a strong personality that would sometimes be disagreeable. He was not afraid to shut down ideas and criticize bad prototypes. For example, he would be so precise and immaculate with his designs that he shut out dozens and dozens of iPod click wheels before the perfect click wheel was ready. But his charisma could convince anyone to do the impossible in a reality that was altered. In the beginning of the Macintosh project, in the early 80s, Jobs told Andy Hertzfeld to ship the software that would launch on the Macintosh in just 10 months. This was an unprecedented feat at that time. But once again, the reality distortion field made it possible. It convinced and motivated all his employees to get the job done. He had a drive and he had a passion to get work done, and that radiated into the people surrounding him. Steve Jobs was a visionary that touched millions through his groundbreaking products. He not only distorted reality, but he also brought a dying company back into life. And, most importantly, he made technology accessible to the masses.